Channel 124, where independent minds come together.
Now, here's Michael Smerconish.
Okay, people. Do you remember when professors and teachers, people, I used to hate that way. People, I need you to do this. People.
Is that what they said?
You don't remember that?
Maybe, no, that's not what they said.
Maybe not at the North Carolina School of Animal Husbandry and Science.
No, ladies and
people,
gentlemen.
I need your attention over here. People, welcome back to the University of Oklahoma. As you know, this is a psychology course. As a matter of fact, it's a psychology course which I've named Lifespan Development. I am your professor, Mel Kurth, and I want to review the assignment that you've all recently been given. Lesson 3.3, a reaction paper, gender typicality, peer relations, and mental health. In other words, I have asked all of you to read from an academic journal from 2014. It was a piece that was titled Relations Among Gender Typicality, Peer Relations, and Mental Health During Early Adolescence. And let me just summarize the gist of that paper, as you all well know because you've read it. So the researchers studied middle school kids to understand how gender typicality, meaning how much a child behaves in line with traditional expectations for boys and girls, affects popularity, teasing, and mental health. They asked classmates to rate one another. They measured peer acceptance, and they looked at indicators like anxiety, depression, and self-esteem. And the key findings of this 2014 academic survey were threefold. First, kids who were seen as more gender typical were usually more popular. Second, kids who didn't fit gender norms, especially boys, were seen as less traditionally masculine, were more likely to be teased or rejected by peers. And third, that teasing predicted worse mental health outcomes. So it wasn't being non-typical alone that caused distress. It was the social reaction to it. For girls, according to the academic study in 2014, the results were more nuanced. Being stereotypically feminine was linked to popularity, but it also came with higher anxiety and body image pressures. The article doesn't argue that gender identity is socially constructed, nor does it advocate any political position. It's simply a social science study about how middle schoolers respond to peers who don't conform to gender norms and how that affects mental health. And that is the article that I've asked you, my students, in this psychology course called Lifespan Development, being taught right here at the University of Oklahoma by me, Professor Mel Kurth, to analyze. Now, remember specifically what was your assignment. Your assignment was to offer a thoughtful discussion of some aspect of that article. Possible approaches, possible reactions included, but are not limited to the following. A discussion of why you feel the topic is important and worthy of study or not. An application of the study or results to your own experiences. An application of the study or results to observations about other behaviors. Alternate interpretations of the researcher's findings. A discussion of how development in this domain might proceed differently at other development stages, etc., etc. And I noted in giving all of you this assignment that there are other possibilities as well. The best reaction papers, because that's what you've been asked to write, illustrate that students have read the assigned materials and engaged in critical thinking about some aspect of the article. And of course, I've told you in advance that you will be graded on a 25-point scale. And you'll be evaluated on the following. Does your paper show a clear tie-in to the assigned article? Does your paper present a thoughtful reaction or response to the article rather than just a summary? And is the paper clearly written? Okay? So what I'd like to do now is to call on at least one of you, and if you're willing to share with the class writ large your reaction paper to this academic study. I'm going to begin with Ms. Fulnecki. Is it Ms. Fulnecki? Samantha Fulnecki. Are you here?
Yes, here.
You are here.
Yes, here.
Would you kindly read a portion of your essay, your submission to Lesson 3.3 to the audience?
This article was very thought-provoking and caused me to thoroughly evaluate the idea of gender and the role it plays in our society. The article discussed peers using teasing as a way to enforce gender norms. I do not necessarily see this as a problem. God made male and female and made us differently from each other on purpose and for a purpose. God is very intentional with what he makes, and I believe trying to change that would only do more harm. Gender roles and tendencies should not be considered stereotypes. Women naturally want to do womanly things because God created us with those womanly desires in our hearts. The same goes for men. God created men in the image of his courage and strength, and he created women in the image of his beauty. He intentionally created women differently from men, and we should live our lives with that in mind. It is frustrating to me when I read articles like this and discussion posts from my classmates of so many people trying to conform to the same mundane opinion so they do not step on people's toes. I think that is a cowardly and insincere way to live. It is important to use the freedom of speech we've been given in this country, and I personally believe that eliminating gender in our society would be detrimental as it pulls us farther from God's original plan for humans.
Ms. Fulnecki, you conclude your essay by saying, overall, reading articles such as this one encourage me to one day raise my children, knowing that they have a heavenly Father who loves them and cherishes them deeply, and that having their identity firmly rooted in who he is will give them the satisfaction and acceptance that the world can never provide for them. My prayer for the world, and specifically for American society and youth, is that they would not believe the lies being spread from Satan that make them believe they are better off as another gender than what God made them. I pray that they feel God's love and acceptance as who he originally created them to be. That was your conclusion.
Yes.
And do you feel that you've adhered to the requirements of this assignment? In other words, do you believe that you've put forth a thoughtful discussion of some aspect of the academic article that you were asked to read?
I do.
Okay. So before I bestow upon you, thank you for playing along.
No problem.
Before I bestow upon you the grade that I, Professor Mel Kurth, shall offer, I'd like to solicit the opinion of the rest of the class.
Yes.
So the class is invited to call this program immediately, and on a scale up to 25 points, to give Ms. Fulnecki her grade. Again, here's the requirement, or here's the grading scale. Did her paper show a clear-cut tie-in to the assigned article? That's worth 10 points.
Tie-in is 10 points.
Tie-in, 10 points.
Okay.
Does the paper present a thoughtful reaction or response to the article rather than a summary? 10 points.
Reaction, 10 points.
Is the paper clearly written? 5 points. Okay, so there are the 25 available points, and I want to know, what grade does she deserve? Okay? Call me, but do it immediately. Yeah, a little something unusual. And by the way, if you know the whole story, come on, don't go giving it away for everybody else. I'm at the usual number, 855-486-1776, if you were the professor who received that submission in response to the lesson as I've summarized it. What grade would you give? 25-point scale. 855-486-1776. I love this audience. Thank you so much for playing along in our academic exercise. And of course, there's a reason that I've started in such a bizarro fashion. I'm looking at the board. Ajara answering our calls in D.C. Ajara, looks like it's a very mixed reaction.
Yes, I agree, but I would say a lot of people would pretty much give her a 15 and above. Not much below, though. I haven't seen anyone say that she deserves a bad grade.
By the way,
No
do you
failures yet.
no failures? Ajar, do you know, based on, I'm about to find out, but the folks whose calls I'm about to take, are they in the loop? Do they seem like they know why I'm asking this?
Yes, they're actually giving me different grades due to her writing, what the message was, if she explained it correctly. So
Okay.
they're giving me different results, but giving me an overall number, and they're looking pretty good.
All right, let's do it. Let us do it. We're going to begin with Casey in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Hi, Casey. What grade are you giving Samantha Fulnecki on a scale up to 25 for the submission made at the University of Oklahoma?
Professor Michael, but I've had a lot of education in my days. I'm giving her at least a 20 to 25. She met all the conditions of the assignment, and she gave her opinion. Now, on the other hand, I'm going to take a little liberty and give the teaching assistant an F, okay? His putrid woke politics have no business in the classroom, man.
All right, don't go giving it all away. I heard your score. Let me get some others. In Lincoln, Illinois, this is Scott. Scott, on a 0 to 25, what are you giving this paper?
12 and a half.
12 and a half. How come?
12 and a half. Because there was nothing scientific about her analysis of the scientific study, and she was pretty much spouting what I think one would expect in Oklahoma.
A little stereotyping there, but you're what, the lack of receptiveness to the trans community is something that you ascribe to the community at large in Oklahoma.
I would say, yeah, absolutely.
Well, on the
University of Oklahoma, she would probably get a 25.
Okay, on the empirical, you have a surprise coming. But on the empirical observation that you make, and others have made it, as I unpeel this entire story, you will learn that there was no requirement that there be anything offered from an empirical standpoint. Again, the grading is supposed to be 10 points. Does the paper show a clear tie to the assigned article? 10 points for, does the paper present a thoughtful reaction or response to the article? And 5 points for, is it clearly written? By the way, can we all agree? Can we all agree? You can disagree with the assertion, but as to whether it was clearly written, don't you give Samantha, TC, the 5 points for clear writing?
I think you have to. Yes, I do.
I mean, at a minimum.
I've obviously when I read it at the beginning, I read like a page and a half, and it's 5 total, and then you read the last page. But yes, it is clearly written. Yeah.
This is in Westchester, New York. This is Ron. Ron, what's your grade?
5 for the writing. Writing was terrific.
Okay.
Reaction, 9-10, because she reacted to it and what her reaction was. But however, the analysis of the information presented was low. She did not go into the information. She did not talk about the analysis and what the study was about. So that might be 2 or 3. So she gets like a 17, maybe 18.
I think that's entirely fair and reasonable the way that you presented it. Yeah, I don't think you can offer less than that. Mark, you're in Toronto. Grade this paper. What's the score for Samantha Fulnecki?
Yeah, she's getting a 5 on the writing. She's going to get a 10 on the second category. I don't know if you've missed or not read us some of the references to the original article in the middle. I think she's probably going to be in that 2021 range, realistically, unless, of course, she was referencing someone like Muhammad, and then she'd be a 23, 24.
Okay. Let me tell you what she actually got.
I was going to say, but Mark's right that there was reference to the article and there was more analysis in the middle, to be fair to Samantha.
True. Gang, she got a Blutarsky. She got a 0.0, and now there are 40 million plus people who've gone and read this whole exchange. And Turning Point USA factors into it because they have embraced her cause. I didn't want to tell you that at the outset because I didn't want it, for better or worse, to impact your thinking. But the professor, the associate professor who received her paper, said the following, in part. I'm not going to read it all. Please note that I am not deducting points because you have certain beliefs, but instead I am deducting points, I guess it should be literally, for you posting a reaction paper that does not answer the questions for this assignment, contradicts itself, heavily uses personal ideology over empirical evidence in a scientific class, and is at times offensive. While you're entitled to your own personal beliefs, there is an appropriate time or place to implement them in your reflections. I encourage all students to question or challenge the course material with other empirical findings or testable hypotheses, but using your own personal beliefs to argue against the findings of not only this article, but the findings of countless articles across psychology, biology, sociology, etc., is not best practice. By the way, I really depart with the professor on that, because the student was asked to respond specifically to this article. And now in the critique, the professor is saying that your findings belie countless other articles across these other spectrums. You argue that abiding by normative gender roles is beneficial. It is perfectly fine to believe this, but then say that everyone should act the same while also saying that people aren't pressured into gendered expectations is contradictory. Further along in the critique by the professor, additionally, to call an entire group of people demonic is highly offensive, especially a minoritized population. You're entitled to your own beliefs, but this isn't a vague narrative of society pushes lies, but instead the result of countless years of developing psychological and scientific evidence. There's more to it, but you get the picture. And then an additional professor says, Samantha, to the student, I'm the other instructor for this course, and I have also taken the time to read your paper, and I concur with Mel, the professor, on your grade that you received. This paper should not be considered a completed assignment. I find it concerning that you state at the beginning of your paper that you do not think bullying, teasing, is a bad thing. I mean, she did say that, right? And now she's being punished for offering that opinion. In addition, your paper directly and harshly criticizes your peers and their opinions, which are just as valuable as yours. This is now a huge brouhaha at the University of Oklahoma. I do not believe that a 0, a Blutarski, was the proper grade. From today's New York Times, college instructor put on leave over 0 grade for gender essay. A University of Oklahoma student says she's the victim of religious discrimination because a psychology instructor gave her a 0 for an essay that cited the Bible and said the lie that there are multiple genders is demonic. The complaint by the student Samantha Fulnecki, a junior, follows a series of similar conflicts at colleges around the country over how professors should talk about gender in the classroom. A battle in which each side insists it is protecting academic freedom and First Amendment rights. And then it goes on to give you some of the background that I've already offered to you. The Oklahoman has great coverage of this. The Oklahoman has been all over it. From their coverage yesterday, a University of Oklahoma student claim of religious discrimination after she failed an assignment is drawing national attention from elected officials, influencers, and millions of social media users. OU officials have said they are investigating the situation, which started in November when Samantha Fulnecki, a junior majoring in psychology at OU, received a 0 on an essay assigned in a psychology course. She was asked to write a 650-word essay reacting to an article about how people are perceived based on societal expectations of gender. In her essay, Fulnecki defended traditional gender rules using the Bible to back her argument that eliminating gender in society would be detrimental because that would put people farther from God's original plan for humans. The instructor, a graduate assistant at the university, said Fulnecki failed to use empirical evidence and called parts of her essay offensive. Now, what you wouldn't know from reading the Times coverage, you read the Times coverage as well, right? I didn't miss it.
You didn't miss it. I was sure you missed it.
Okay,
I just sure you missed it.
I just think that by omission, it's very misleading. I think to tell the story, you need to know that the professor, the graduate student, in this case, acting as a professor, is a member of the trans community. And I find that in everybody else's coverage.
Everybody else's coverage.
But why would they not have put that? Why would they?
But by the way, everybody else's coverage from the right and the left, not just the right-leaning coverage. The left-leaning coverage also is very clear.
But why would they have omitted that? They had to make a conscious decision.
I think why they admitted that, because they didn't want it to color the story.
I just think you need to know everything in order to have an opinion. By the way, there's a lot of nastiness being directed toward the graduate student acting as an associate or assistant professor in this case. I should get the semantics right. I want no part of that.
Of course not.
That's disgusting. But it's a great conversation to have, and we're having it as to what should the grade have been. It certainly should have been north of a 0, in my opinion.
Would we be having the conversation if it was slightly north of a 0, if they got the 5 for writing? I mean, it's sort of fascinating, right?
I don't think we'd be having,
really something.
I don't think we'd be dedicating this much attention to it. But a 0 on the basis asserted by the professor when she laid out the grade scale. I mean, by the way, this may be insightful as to the professor. I need to tell you one more thing about this. You must write a 650-word essay, body of text, double-spaced reaction paper demonstrating that you read the assigned article, and include a thoughtful reaction to the material presented in the article. Listen to this part. Maybe this will take you back or not. Points will be deducted when papers are deficient in any of these areas. I will deduct 10 points if your paper is between 620 and 649 words. And I will not give credit for papers under 620 words. Papers not turned in by the deadline will not receive credit. Wait, what? If the paper, if it calls for 650 words and I submit 649, you're taking off 10 points? Come on.
That's just all kinds of crazy.
That just like...
Yeah, no. That can't be
raises my curiosity. Right. There it is.
Okay.
Okay. Now you know, as Paul Harvey would say, the rest of the story. So now that you're armed with everything, call and discuss. A post by Turning Point USA on the subject that we're discussing right now, this Blutarski of a grade offered to a student at the University of Oklahoma, has drawn more than 40 million views and thousands of online comments. Curious as to your grading. Matt, you're in College Park. You think that the professor, the graduate student acting as a professor, got it right. How come?
I did. Hey, Michael, how you doing?
Oh, well.
So I just wanted to kind of tie this all in. So I actually do grade papers, and one of the reasons why I think this is important to say that this should get a 0 is because, one, if you look at all those criteria that professor gave, they were very minimal or vague, and also they did not meet what actually should have been fully written on there. This article was not an opinion piece. It was not something you say, this is my opinion on something. It's a reaction, a thoughtful reaction to what the argument was in the paper. This paper, as I read it, was very contradictory. It was vague. It was not up to the standard that
Okay, so you're giving it a 0.
Yes, had I would been grading it, I had that exact criteria for how to write it, then I think that would be a 0.
Well, but how about wait a minute. The first of these points, Matt, hang on. The first of these criteria worth 10 points is there a clear link back to the assigned article? I'll stop there. Of course there is. And secondly, can the reader assess whether the student has read the article? The answer to that is yes. So how could you not give any points for that 10-point criteria alone? How could you shut her out on that basis?
I have not read. One, I have not read that full article. She cites one part of it, saying that this person thought that.
I summarized it.
Is bad.
Okay, right? I hear you. You're a zero. You're a zero, and I appreciate it. I got to keep moving only because somebody want to weigh in on this. Mary, I understand you're a retired teacher from Pennsylvania. What's your score?
I am. Well, I changed my score.
Oh. Okay.
I was going with a 20, but now I'm going with a 5.
Wow, what? That's a pretty significant shift. How come?
It is. Well, because I had the same experience in high school, believe it or not. I had a senior react to an evolution question. I forget what we were talking about, but he cited that women, if evolution was true, that women, because they're so busy, would have 3 arms. I kid you not. That's what he said. So, in my opinion, the professor probably would have been safer to return the paper and have her rewrite it and explain that I only want, the former guy said, it's a little vague. And you know what? She didn't really, Michael, I disagree with you. She didn't really show that she read the article because she already had a preconceived notion of what she was going to say based on her religious beliefs. So she could have not read anything and been able to write that paper because that's what she feels about it.
Look, it's entirely possible. It's entirely possible that the student here was itching for exactly what has happened. It's entirely possible.
Yes,
apparently she's going to speak publicly for the first time today. So it's another reason why I wanted to talk about this subject today is because I think there's a heck of a lot more coming about it. I also have to say that I thought, I always like it when people step out of their bubble. And so when I saw a quote from Richard Hanania, a conservative political scientist and writer who said, you have to pass students who only cite religious faith for their opinions now, or they're victims of discrimination. Limiting or being dismissive of the whole idea here. In other words, what's he saying? He's saying she didn't show any academic merit. All she did was cite her own religious coda. And what? If I, as the professor now, don't want to pass that, I'm discriminating? Maybe everybody got what they were looking for. I don't know. Maybe the professor got what she was looking for, and maybe the student got what she was looking for. Soon we will know. Mark, you're in New Orleans. Quick comment from you, and thank you for your phone call.
Thanks. I think this story falls in the category of not worth our time. I think this is the type of story that is dividing America. It's almost too perfect. A trans professor, a highly religious student,
right,
immediately getting national attention. This is like the antithesis of your Mingle project, Michael. This is, let's try to divide America.
No.
This story, I'm not blaming you.
How could I not talk about it? Because as you point out, it's got all the elements and has drawn the interest of more than 40 million people online. Of course this is my kind of thing. I love exploring this as an academic matter of what should the grade have been.
This story is a setup.
It may be. By the way, Mark, it may be. It may be. Maybe the two of them are
absolute setup.
All right, let's keep our eye on it and see where it goes. Debbie, you're in Milford, Delaware. What's your grade?
I gave her a 15. So I'd give her 10 points for the tie-in because she did effectively go back and forth to the original paper and basically cite what the paper said. I'd give her 5 because what she wrote was clearly written, but I would give her 0 points for the thoughtful reaction. Reciting dogma and ideology is not thoughtful reaction because thoughtful reaction in a class that's a science class, psychology, on a scientific paper should include addressing the issues actually raised by the paper, the conclusions and the findings of the paper. So that's what I would give her.
15, I think, is a fair score. This is Amy in Austin. Hi, Amy. Greetings. What did you most want to say?
Hi, I want to say she got a 4, not a 0. I know Blutarski is fun, and that's what's being reported, but my daughter is a student at OU. It's actually all the talk on campus. It's overshadowing their playoff berth in the college football playoffs, and people are mad about it. They're protesting the school on Friday because they feel this lessens their degree that a paper like this would, be allowed to pass. So her mom is a conservative lawyer who defended J6ers. I do think what Mark said about this being a setup could be true, but the young woman did have an interview on KOCO News yesterday, and she was quite inarticulate. She actually, the old Lincoln quote about keeping your mouth shut so people don't know that you're dumb would have applied there. She did not sound great. So after seeing that interview, I thought, nope, not a setup. She just really isn't smart. She didn't address any analysis of the paper, and students are outraged. They feel like their degree is worth less now.
Hey, Amy, you're breaking news to me because I'm well read in on this story, including at the Oklahoman, which has had great coverage, and I've seen no reference to a 4. Like, when did that happen? Because every story, including the most recent, speaks of it being a 0.
It seems that the 4 was the initial grade, and when Turning Point got involved, it became a 0. The Oklahoman also probably is the one where you saw that her mother is a lawyer. Like, that's where it felt like, oh, this might be a setup. Her mom is a conservative activist lawyer. That's how it got to the president of the school so quickly. That's how it got to the governor.
But I can't imagine. Let me just hang. Maybe this is splitting hairs, but I can't imagine that the New York Times or the Oklahoman are simply buying into some Turning Point scam to go from a 4 to a 0. They're reporting she got a 0.
The initial reporting was that she failed the paper, and the information was out there. She displayed the paper on her Instagram. Her Instagram is still public. You can see it. And it had a 4. Then when Turning Point got involved, it became a 0. The failed turned into a 0.
I need to know more, but thank you for that. Thank you for the insight. I need to know more on that score. Jay is in Fort Worth, Texas. Hi, Jay. Greetings. What did you most want to say?
Hey, Michael. Just to give you a little context, I have an undergraduate degree, 2 graduate level degrees, and she, in my opinion, gets a 5 because it was clearly written. However, she gets a 0 for everything else because it's an academic paper. And anybody who's been in any type of graduate program or whatever knows that you have to cite sources. You have to cite academic sources when you're writing an academic paper. It's not an opinion piece or whatever, and she's entitled to her opinion. Yeah, that's cool, but in class, it's an academic paper.
I don't know. So it's billed. But Jay, it's billed as a reaction paper. I mean, lesson 3.3, reaction paper, gender typicality, peer relations, and mental health is the way that it was captioned. Let me take a college professor of 10 years in St. Augustine. Mike, how do you see this?
Well, I taught thousands of students, and I never had an argument over grade. And so I would give the professor a 0 because I gave nothing but tests with multiple choice or answers that came in numbers. And so I never had an argument and never gave an essay as a test. That's just like it creates things like this.
Yeah. So can I say something in terms of evaluating the professor who is actually a grad student? I mean, it's a 2014 study that to me was probably assigned to make a point. How revelatory is it that the kids who don't identify as gender typical get picked on? I mean, that breaks my heart. But I can't help but think that the professor assigned this particular paper to kind of drill that point home with the students, and now comes upon a religious student who is unaccepting of trans identity and had a overreaction in flunking her as a result. How about if I say it this way? There's enough blame to go around in this case. There's enough blame to go around. We'll wrap up on this. Get ready for Mark Halperin, talk politics in the second hour of the program. Admiral James Stavridis here in hour 3. I haven't even mentioned it yet, but the poll question today I think is a real intriguing one. Should Admiral Mitch Bradley face disciplinary action for his role in the second strike on a suspected drug trafficking boat? Make sure you're going to Smerconish.com and voting on today's poll question. Yesterday, one of the closest Smerconish.com poll results that we've ever had on a sports question. Should Ole Miss have allowed Lane Kiffin to finish the season even after he accepted the LSU job? The no votes, 50.54%. The yes votes, 49.46%. And there's an update on this story, and we have it in the newsletter today. The update is that several of the players from Ole Miss are now telling a different story than Lane Kiffin told on his way out the door. Quote, multiple Ole Miss players are disputing former Rebels head coach Lane Kiffin's description of how the team reacted to his departure for LSU. Kiffin said Sunday that his request to coach Ole Miss through the college football playoff had been denied by athletic director Keith Carter, quote, despite the team also asking him to allow me to keep coaching them so that they could better maintain their high level of performance. But Ole Miss junior linebacker Suntarine Perkins wrote Tuesday that Kiffin's post was not the message you said in the meeting room. Everybody that was in there can vouch on this, Perkins wrote. And then sophomore offensive lineman Bryson Sanders wrote, everybody that was in that room would disagree that the team asked Kiffin to keep coaching. So I said yesterday that relative to whether he should have been allowed to continue to coach at Ole Miss, my head was saying one thing and my heart was saying another, that my heart was saying, I wish he could stick around at Ole Miss and finish the season because he's letting down all those players. My head is saying it's a big business and he's got to get out the door. But maybe I was wrong in thinking that, the heart necessitated siding with the players because it sounds like the players didn't want him. According to these stories, it sounds like the players didn't want him to stick around. Ole Miss senior offensive lineman Jaden Williams backed Sanders' post, saying the Rebels named former defensive coordinator Pete Golding head coach in the wake of his departure. Kiffin said in his statement that he'd been hoping to complete a historic 6-season run by leading Ole Miss through the playoffs, but then there are other accounts from people who say that the players were eager to have him hit the highway. Today's poll question at Smerconish.com asks, of course, about what's going on relative to Pete Hegseth and President Trump and the strike against the presumed drug boat back on September 2nd. It's the Admiral that I'm focusing on. Should Admiral Mitch Bradley face disciplinary action for his role in the second strike on a suspected drug trafficking boat? Everybody's got an opinion on Pete Hegseth, opinions that are usually predicated on suiting up in your usual partisan jersey. But I'm asking in the poll question today, what about the Admiral? And the semantics are important here, order, requested, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it seems like the directive came from the White House in terms of how to handle these drug interdiction matters, and that Secretary Hegseth then he's not able to give an order necessarily, but the direction that it ought to be carried out. It's the Admiral who gave the order. So if you want Hegseth disciplined, I think you also need to be calling for the discipline of the Admiral. We'll get to that as the program unfolds and when I welcome Admiral James Stavridis. Okay, Tony, you're my final hitter on the teaching situation at the University of Oklahoma. What did you want to say?
Hey, good morning, guys. Thanks for taking my call. I appreciate it. A couple of things. Shout out to Tom. I agree with him that I think it's a complete setup. And number two, I'd like to see some of the other papers that were submitted that were similar to this student's paper and the scores that they got. Sounds like you got some homework to do, Michael, because it sounds like the initial reporting on this was flawed.
How was the initial reporting flawed?
Well, it sounds like from that mom who called in, I forget her name, I apologize, but it sounds like the grade was not reported properly. And
I got to tell you, if that's true, I hate to doubt the mom from Texas who has a daughter there, but I've seen that nowhere. Here's a snippet of the interview. We only have time to play a snippet, but here's the student actually speaking. Roll it, PJ.
It's over just yet. I just did the assignment and turned it in, and I talked about the Bible in it. That is, I view all of my opinions in the world through the Bible. Samantha Fulnecky.
Yeah, well, there you are to get a quick look at her. How about this? To be continued. Mark Halperin is in the On Deck Circle. It's a Wednesday, always in the second hour of the Wednesday program. He is our guest. We'll run through the political headlines of the day, and then a perfect day. I always say that, but it's always true. Admiral Stavridis, former Supreme Allied Commander of NATO, who better to discuss all the controversy surrounding the boat strikes than with the Admiral. Stick around. We'll do both next.
Here's Michael Smerconish.
My lead story today in the Smerconish.com daily newsletter comes from the Tennessean. How could it not? Republican U.S. Army combat veteran Matt Van Epps has clinched a single-digit victory in Tennessee's special 7th District congressional election, fending off a shockingly competitive challenge from Democrat Atten Ben and adding one more vote to the razor-thin GOP majority. Unofficial final tally showed Van Epps with a lead of 9 percentage points in a district that Donald Trump won by 22 points last year. Perfect fodder for a conversation with Mark Halperin. He's here, of course, in the second hour of every Wednesday's program. Mark, nice to see you. Thoughts on last night's outcome in Tennessee? How big a deal that it was Trump by 22 and Van Epps by 9?
Well, if the conditions that allowed a pretty liberal opposition research savaged, heavily spended against Democrat in a very red district, if all the dynamics that allowed her to seriously overperform what a liberal Democrat should do in that district pervade next year, Republicans will lose control of the House, and maybe substantially. You can do it on the math level of saying, if you take all the congressional districts where Republicans are running to hold seats won by Donald Trump and move the thing 15 points, which is, roughly what she moved it from the Trump 2024 performance, Republicans would lose, many, many House seats. So what are those dynamics? They're primarily the two dynamics that are most dangerous for any incumbent president dealing with a midterm election. One is send a message to the president. There needs to be a check on the president. Send a message. They want him to compromise more, get more done. And two is the economy is not good, and they want better economic conditions. They want more focus on affordability. I thought it was extraordinarily rich that if you end up writing a TikTok of how the midterms go, let's assume there's a pretty big blue wave, just for hypothetical. If you were writing about that, you'd be struck by the fact that on the day that Republicans were being sent a message, but that they barely won in the sense by narrowish margin, a House seat in red Tennessee. The president is calling affordability a hoax and saying it's something Democrats have made up in his cabinet meeting. That's a level of tone deafness to the real lives of real people that Republicans don't want to see. They want to see the opposite from him. Republican strategists, people running for election in November of next year, they want to see the president embracing the very thing, ironically, again, that got him elected in 2024, which is, I'm the guy who gets the economy. I'm the guy with a theory of the case of how to make your life better, and I'll fight for you every day, rather than building a ballroom or talking about affordability being a hoax.
It seems like a precursor, I'll use President Obama's word, to a shellacking. And as you well know, historically speaking, it's the party that's outside the White House that does best in those midterm elections. It would be shocking, at least to me, if at this stage, it'd be shocking to me if Republicans were able, given their thin margin, to maintain control of the House of Representatives.
Here are the three reasons that I wouldn't be shocked. I'd certainly make them, because of history, I'd make the Democrats the favorite to take the House. But here are the three reasons I think not to be shocked. Number one, there's a long time to go, right? So the issues that now pervade, that put the president on his back foot and his party on the back foot, they may be different by then. Number two, there's a very small number of competitive races, barring just a massive blue wave. And so all Republicans have to do is to figure out how to recruit strong candidates if it's an open seat, how to, and hope that Democrats nominate people who are liberal and maybe out of step with those competitive districts. So there's just not that big a playing field where Republicans have to triage and try to do it. And then lastly, the Democrats don't really have their own plans that are very specific or very popular. Now, sometimes as the ad party, you don't need that. But you think back to the Contract of America, you think to some of these other instances where parties have swept in and done very, very well, they typically have some things they talk about that voters can understand. And so I'm curious to see if Democrats run on anything but be a check on Donald Trump, the economy is not good.
It may be enough. And I would add that in terms of who's lacking a plan, I still think that the full impact of these Affordable Care Act subsidies and rising health insurance premiums has not been felt and will be felt in January, if not sooner, as more people are opening up those envelopes. I don't know what the Republican response is. I mean, they say that they're going to put forth something as an alternative to Obamacare, but it's not been forthcoming in any of Trump 1.0 or during the course of the campaign. He had nothing to say about it. I think that's the big issue that looms.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And again, yesterday at the cabinet meeting, the Secretary of Treasury and the Vice President said, happy days will be here again next year. They confidently predicted that, but most economic experts aren't necessarily agreeing there. Abe Greenwald of Commentary wrote something yesterday that I quoted in my newsletter that I think is so smart, and it pertains not just to healthcare, but to affordability generally, which is Donald Trump's not really explaining stuff, right? You'll see him throw out healthcare ideas, for instance, but I have no idea what Donald Trump thinks about healthcare. Does he want more people to be covered? Does he want there to be less spending on certain healthcare programs, more on certain programs? What's his goal? What's his goal for healthcare? Is it to reduce costs? Is it to expand coverage? Does he think he can do both? What's his theory of the case about these things? He doesn't talk about it. He's not Bill Clinton. He's not in the policy weeds. But when he's been at his most successful politically, both in office and as a candidate, it's when he's giving people the sense he's fighting for them. That's the bargain people make, particularly since we started this long-term economic decline, whether you want to trace it to the 70s or the 80s or the 90s. This long-standing concern that people have that their kids and their grandkids won't have the economic opportunities that they did. What they want to do is hire on a president who says, and gives them the confidence. Every day I'm going to get up, I'm going to think, what can I do to help you and your family make things a little better? He's just not doing that on healthcare, and that's something Republicans would like to see change.
What do you see in him in terms of personal behavior, if anything, in terms of shifts? I mean, I know if you put a camera on me 24/7, believe me, you're going to come and find many unflattering poses, and some with me capturing a yawn or maybe even a nap. So I don't know what to make of the one-offs that I see of those where they're showing his gait or they're showing him with his eyes closed at the cabinet meeting. I do see the social media activity seemingly in the middle of the night. Then again, I'm not sure if it's really coming from him, but you've been watching him for a long, long time. So what changes, if any, do you see of him that are of significance?
Well, I have standing to speak to this issue because I'm one of the few people you know who's fallen asleep both on live television and a live radio interview.
Hopefully not this interview, but thank you. Yes.
Well, I won't say. I'll say say emphatically, I have not fallen asleep on this episode, but I cannot speak to all previous episodes of this program. Not because you're not engaging and lively, but because sometimes I'm tired. I think knowing about human beings and knowing about this president, and then seeing how late he was up, both late at night and then again early on Truth Social, I think he's tired. I think it's bad staff work. He should be given a Diet Coke or two, and they should figure out a way to end the cabinet meeting before he falls asleep. So my guess is it's not some neurological or physical or aging problem. It's just, again, I'm a particularly adept sleeper in meetings, so I have sympathy here, but lots of people are, and that room is pretty stuffy. The speeches, were not scintillating. So, again, the staff should not let him be in a position where he might fall asleep. But that's what I think is happening there. In general, this is the oldest dog with the fewest new tricks of anyone any of us have ever known.
True.
He's not going to change. He's not going to change. When people say, "Well, he needs to stop saying rude things to reporters," or he needs to stop complaining about the 2020 election, or he needs to stop bragging about the ballroom. No, maybe he needs to, but he won't. And so the question is, can he do all those things, which he's going to do, and find a way to talk more about the economy the way Republican strategists and House members would like him to do?
Meanwhile, the war continues between Russia and Ukraine, and Putin shows no signs of being any closer to a resolution.
Well, there won't be a deal till there is a deal, right? Putin's not going to, be signing on until he's ready to sign on. I thought the comments from the Kremlin spokespeople in this meeting, Putin pulled his normal stunt with foreign leaders. He waited, made them wait several hours after the announced start time in the meeting. Didn't start till early evening Russia time and went past midnight. But I was struck by how positive the comments were from the Kremlin spokespeople, who said not that there's a final deal, but who didn't say this is unsolvable. They said good progress. There's more to be done. Today, we're seeing the same two, Witkoff and Kushner, briefing Zelensky. So they're engaged in classic shuttle diplomacy. And again, there's no doubt we're closer than we've been since the war started to a deal. I'm more bullish on it than most people are, because I think that the alternatives are so gruesome that they really just have to find a way to do it. But it's clear now that Zelensky will make a deal. It may cost him his job. It may have him go down in history a way he doesn't want to, but I think it's pretty clear that he's going to be for a deal and that Europe will reluctantly be for a deal, assuming it's within certain parameters. We just don't know what Putin wants, and that's been the central riddle of this whole thing from the start.
Mark, in the third hour of the program, 45 minutes from now, Admiral James Stavridis, former Supreme Allied Commander of NATO, will be here. We'll talk about the law of the sea and these drug interdiction battles. I want to talk to Mark Halperin about the politics of all of this. Talk to me about, for example, yesterday, we were making reference a moment ago to the cabinet meeting, but you had Secretary Hegseth side by side with President Trump. Hegseth saying that a couple of hours passed before he was made aware that a September military strike he authorized and watched live required an additional attack to kill 2 survivors, further distancing himself from the incident and now facing congressional inquiry. That's the caption of the Washington Post. What are the politics of this as you see it?
Well, they're complicated, right? This is a multidimensional issue related to sort of Hegseth's personal role in all this, the president's, the admiral who's testifying on Capitol Hill tomorrow, and then all the issues of, forget this one incident. Is it okay for the president to be blowing up boats in the Caribbean without any due process or detailed knowledge of what the cargo is and where it's going? These are tough constitutional, historical questions. I was led to believe that Hegseth was on thin ice, and then in the cabinet meeting, the president hugged him tighter than you would hug a pretzel with mustard, hot pretzel with mustard, which you hug tightly, by the way, when given the opportunity to have one, because you're a good Philly man. He was so supportive, and I think Hegseth's explanation, while it's changed over time, is actually not inconsistent. His current explanation is not inconsistent with the facts as we know them, although we don't know all the facts. And we always, though, have to be struck by when Republicans in Congress who are not named Murkowski or Collins or McConnell want accountability and are insisting on accountability. And we see that with, for instance, Chairman Wicker of Mississippi, who heads the Armed Services Committee in the Senate, Republican. They want more answers. They've been asking for more answers, not just about this particular mission, but about the overall use of drones to kill human beings and destroy boats. Lastly, I'll say, if we take the totality of what's been reported and what the secretary himself said, they may not have been trying to kill those 2 guys. They may have been trying to make sure the boat was destroyed and the cargo was destroyed. And unfortunately for those 2 human beings, they were killed in the process. If that's the case, then it's a much different kettle of fish than if the second tap was intended to kill them, that was the purpose of it. If the purpose of it was to destroy the boat, it's more ambiguous from a legal matter and a political matter.
But the White House makes it hard to give, and I often say this, and I often say this to you, the White House makes it hard to give the president, the secretary, the admiral, the benefit of the doubt, because there has to be video. I think logically there has to be video of that strike. There's video of all the other strikes. And if it exonerated the behavior of everybody in the chain of command, we'd have seen it by now. Don't you agree?
Not necessarily. I think there's 3 pieces of data, known knowns that we don't have. One, as you said, is the video. There may be other reasons why they haven't released it, but you're right to be suspicious about it. Second is all the legal orders that the lawyers in the room either physically or virtually. What did they sign off on? What we don't know what the lawyers said was okay to do. So we need to see that. And then any communication between the secretary, the admiral, and anyone else involved about what they actually, were seeing on the live video, what they said they were trying to accomplish. We know much more, thanks to the Washington Post, the New York Times, and the secretary himself. We know much more than we did just a few days ago about what happened, but we don't know everything. And I think you are making the point that a lot of Democratic senators are making, which is if there's nothing to hide, if this was legal and lawful and politically wise, show us everything. Now, there's some reasons not to for national security sources and methods, et cetera. But I suspect we'll know more probably by the end of the week, not just because the admiral's testifying, but I think we'll know more. And then it'll be a healthy political debate, not just on this particular case, but again, there are a lot of Americans who find it either illegal, unwise, or immoral, or all three, to, without a declaration of war for Congress, just start blowing up boats.
I ask you, Pat Buchanan, do we get to see the video within the next week?
Do we get to see the video within the next week? I would say no.
Do we ever get to see the video?
We will. Yes, but not the next week, I would guess.
Okay. Mark, that was excellent. Thank you as always. Appreciate your being here. The second hour of the program. What can I promote for you?
You could promote for me next up on the Megyn Kelly Network, also on SiriusXM. My new program have a long discussion about these constitutional issues. A conversation with Katie Miller, the podcaster and spouse of Stephen Miller, about how her family deals with death threats and other unpleasantries associated with their life in the public eye. And then my reported monologue is on this question of Democrats just being gleeful. They think Donald Trump has finally met his match, that he's finally at the end of his political rope and that his presidency is basically over. And then my reporting from Republicans about why they think there's a path here, as Trump has done so many times before, to come back. Next up, available on YouTube and as a podcast and here on the SiriusXM network.
Thank you, Mark. We look forward to Mark being here in the second hour of every Wednesday's program. I'm going to pick up where he just left off. I love the question of whether it's the beginning, politically speaking, of the end for the president in view of that result in Tennessee last night. I have to say, my hunch is that many of the outlets had their political coverage geared and ready and, dare I say, hopeful for a Democratic victory in Tennessee last night, so that even more so would be compelling their argument that it's a harbinger of what's to come in the midterm election next year. It's not a good sign for the Republicans. I can't see how Republicans maintain control of the House of Representatives next year. This is a district that was won by Trump by 22 and now was won by 9 by the U.S. Army combat veteran. It's a win nonetheless. I am mindful, though, of Mark's observation, and it's true. David Wasserman at Cook Political Report with Amy Walter, who's been a frequent guest here, makes it often, which is to say 435 congressional districts in the country. How many of them really are in play? Because of a combination of self-sorting and a combination of gerrymandering, there are probably only 24 or 30 that are up for grabs. So if it's a blowout, yeah, Republicans will lose control of the House of Representatives, but it's not going to be a 50 or 60 seat gain like we've seen in elections past. I offer that to you. Politically speaking, where are we today relative to the president? You might not like him, but does he rebound, or is this the new norm? An approval rating that is south of 40% by some of the data that I've seen. Call me on the politics of the day. React to how significant is the news that in Tennessee, in this special election, yes, Republicans held the seat, but they held the seat by a much smaller margin than when Donald Trump ran not so long ago. I'm at 855-486-1776. We'll talk to Admiral Stavridis about the boat issue. If you want to get in on that, that's fine as well. I've got plenty of thoughts. The poll question today at Smerconish.com asks, should the Admiral face disciplinary action for his role in the second strike? In my view, it's a given. If it happened the way the Post is reporting it, it's a given that Secretary Hegseth has culpability. I think the interesting question, the more interesting question is, what about the Admiral? So we'll do that as well. And gang, thanks for the telephone calls. I appreciate it. On the politics of the day, we head to Yonkers, where James is standing by. Hi, James. What thoughts do you have?
Good morning, Michael. Yeah,
Hello.
you know, my thoughts about these boats. If in fact these are drug boats, how about you board a boat, film everything, show the world what these people are doing, instead of just blowing up boats and we're supposed to believe what you're saying? I mean, you can't believe anything these people say. It doesn't make any sense to me. Why not just show the world? It'd be so simple. You board the boat, you film the drugs, and then we can see, okay. I mean, but just blowing up boats and then going in a second time just to kill people, come on.
There was a story that I that I linked to in the newsletter 2 days ago from Axios, where they reported on every one of the boat strikes that we're aware of. And I went then looking for information of some kind of an evidentiary display by the administration proving the circumstances of any one of them. And I couldn't find anything. Like, they haven't done what you've recommended, which I think would be a great thing in any of these instances. But I think it would satisfy some of the public concern, not all of the public concern. Prove to us, here's what you're saying, prove to us that they are as bad as you tell us they are. And you could win the court of opinion in many respects if you do it. Jim, you're in Michigan, I believe, and I think about to say something similar. Hi.
Hello, Michael. Hey, I called a year ago and kidded you about you needed to smile more on your CNN show.
And did I?
Remember that? We talked with Keith. And you do a little bit.
Okay.
Improve on that.
Okay, well, I'm smiling now just listening to you, so you can take credit for it. How's that?
You and TC have such a good time, and that doesn't come across on Saturday mornings, you know?
You know, it's a different kind of a show. I've got 15 hours.
I understand.
15 hours here. I get 42 or 43 minutes there.
Michael, I think you still need a show at 9 o'clock at night on CNN.
All right, I'm busy enough. I'm busy enough. Go ahead. What's your third point?
Okay. So my take was on the boat issue in the Caribbean, that why haven't we captured a boat, proven there's drugs on there?
That's what the last guy said.
Oh, did he? Okay. Yeah. I wasn't able to.
No. It's okay. You were on hold. I'm just saying that two in a row are making the exact same point, which is show us the evidence.
That's correct. Michael, I am not a Trump fan, but I'm from Michigan, and I have something to say how he could gain a lot of positive publicity.
What is it?
Something. We have a new bridge going up, the Gordie Howe Bridge, that links Windsor, Canada to Detroit.
Okay.
It's going to open within the next year. And here our relations with Canada are so bad, okay? I've been a hockey player my whole life. I love Canadians. If he came to Detroit for the opening of that bridge and said, we're going to remove all tariffs because I've worked something out with the Canadian government, he would be a hero here in Michigan.
Okay, Jim.
Probably will never happen.
Jim, right.
Yep.
To your last point, I would like to sell you the Gordie Howe Bridge. I'm only asking $10K for it if you're game. That's my way of saying it's not going to okay, that was lost on you. Thank you, Jim. I appreciate it very much. I will continue to try and smile more. I just want to echo that. We have cameras everywhere now in studio. The studio's gorgeous. The cameras are clear. And a lot of content is now available on my YouTube channel. So please subscribe and set yourself up for notifications. You'll get a nice perspective from in the house, as we say. I was just talking to Mark Halperin about the impact of affordability and the economy on the president's standing. And the president most recently now saying that affordability is a hoax. Well, he might want to hear this, because USA Today has a story that they've just posted that I'll put up on the screen, as a matter of fact, for the benefit of those who do watch on YouTube. And the headline on it says, even millionaires don't feel wealthy these days. Just listen to the lead. $1 million is not what it used to be. Only 36% of American millionaires consider themselves wealthy in 2025. This is new research from Northwestern Mutual. The finding comes from their Planning and Progress study. It draws on a Harris poll of 4,626 Americans, including 969 people with household investable assets greater than $1 million. And the finding is that even the wealthiest Americans are worried about money. If $1 million isn't enough, then how much does it take to feel wealthy? There's no definitive number, says a private wealth advisor who was quoted in the piece. I love that. I've got to dig into to all of that data. Okay, back to your phone calls we go. Moving quickly, lightning round rules. You can tell me whatever you want to tell me. Just get right to it. Nathan in Virginia Beach, what's your thought?
Hey, Michael, real quick. So I don't know that even if we saw video evidence of what took place on that boat, that it would change the narrative of the folks that support President Trump. I certainly don't think that him falling asleep in cabinet meetings or anything else for that matter, he could stumble and fall and people would still give him all sorts of credit for anything. Conversely, I do want to make a comment about Halperin, and I know that you hate this because he's not here to defend himself, but he was on Megyn Kelly's show last night, and Megyn Kelly made some atrocious comments about what should be done to individuals. You know what?
Okay, I'm gonna let you finish your thought. But now you're really out of bounds because not only is Mark not here, and that's okay because we're finishing up the hour talking politics. But now you're going to dip into some other program that I haven't listened to, aired, and you're commenting on something from somebody else. Like call Megyn Kelly, and tell her what you think.
If you think about it, she doesn't take calls.
I don't know that. No, you're breaking news to me because I don't watch. Go ahead, just make the point quickly that you want to make.
Well, I can say is that Mark went along with it and didn't even push back against what he heard. Okay. But he comes on your show and can spin it in a different way, which I don't think that that's a fair way to represent that to your audience.
Okay, I know none of what you're saying, so it's hard for me to respond. But apparently he didn't push back on something offensive that she said. That's the gist of what I'm hearing. Iowa. Hello, Jacob in Dubuque. Tell me one thing you wanted to say.
Hey, I just mainly have a question for the Admiral when you get to talk to him. I was a former P-3 air crewman that did counter narcotic operations. We had to coordinate with the Coast Guard to have these people arrested and then go to federal court. My question is, what capability does the pilot or the mission commander have in all of this drug interdiction? Like, I get the Admiral is screwed no matter what, but when we flew, we weren't allowed to even touch them, much less fly over them or anything else.
Where's
the capability for that crew?
There's something I want you to hear. Let me just see if I can fire this up. PJ, do you have the Andrew Napolitano video from Fox News? Let me know if you do and if I can play that. Because to Jacob's point, he says everybody in that chain of command has culpability. That it's not only Hegseth and it's not only the Admiral, but it's also...
It gives me no pleasure to say what I'm about to say because I worked with Pete Hegseth for 7 or 8 years at Fox News. This is an act of a war crime, ordering survivors who the law requires be rescued instead to be murdered. There's absolutely no legal basis for it. Everybody along the line who did it, from the Secretary of Defense to the Admiral to the people who actually pulled the trigger, should be prosecuted for a war crime for killing these two people.
And who would bring that
Jacob in Dubuque, that's his answer. That's Judge Napolitano's answer to your question. Curious, and then I've got to move on. So you're a former air crewman. You've done exactly this kind of work. Have you ever fired arms on a drug boat or anything similar?
Never. In the United States Navy, we were never allowed to do that. We had to call in the Coast Guard and work with the Coast Guard to intercept that boat because I've seen people throw bales of something into the water. We found out it was cocaine, but you don't know what's on those boats until the Coast Guard intercepts them, arrests them, inspects that boat, even semi-submersibles. Everything.
What is your answer to my poll question today, which asks, should Admiral Mitch Bradley face disciplinary action for his role in the second strike on a suspected drug trafficking boat. Yay or nay?
Yes.
Okay. Well, 21,009. Thank you for your phone call. 21,928 have voted as of this minute in time. 62% are saying yes. I'm kind of surprised, by the way, that 38% are saying no. This is Perry. Perry's in Norfolk, Virginia, on the question about the Admiral. What's your thought, Perry? And thank you for your phone call.
Okay, first I want to say yesterday I wanted to call you and say The Insider, Al Pacino and Russell Crowe, great movie about journalism. Anyway, the Admiral is going to face accountability because UCMJ gives you room to not to commit to a unlawful order, and you got to use a little bit of common sense that has a moral value about it.
Is that all you wanted to say?
Yep.
Okay. From the original story in the Washington Post last Friday, there's one paragraph that I want to read to you and everybody else. The commander overseeing the operation from Fort Bragg in North Carolina, Admiral Frank M. Mitch Bradley, told people on the secure conference call that the survivors were still legitimate targets because they could theoretically call other traffickers to retrieve them and their cargo. That's according to two people, says the Post. He ordered the second strike to fulfill Hegseth's directive that everyone must be killed. This is what Hegseth is denying, but in that same Wash Post story, they say Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth gave a spoken directive, according to two people. The order was to kill everybody, one of them said. Perry, thank you for that. I appreciate it very much. Art is standing by in Atlanta. Hi, Art. What did you want to contribute?
Hey, when you talk to the Admiral today, thank you, by the way. When you talk to the Admiral, could you ask him about Admiral Hoseley? He's an African-American four-star admiral who resigned 2 months ago, and the guy is young. He's in his 50s.
Yeah.
He resigned, and the black media is all because...
Right. Pardon my interruption. We talked about him yesterday, and I said that I thought he...
Well, I didn't hear.
That's okay. I said that I thought he was in a role that typically is a 3 to 5 year process. I went back and looked it up last night. He checked out after a year of a gig that is normally a 3-year process. And the implication is that he did not want to be a part of unlawful orders. And I haven't seen anybody tie it specifically to this, but I'm waiting to learn more. So thank you for putting that.
You know how hard it is?
Yeah, finish your thought. I'm sorry.
You know how hard it is to become an African-American four-star admiral? And he's not like Hegseth. You know, that guy falls forward for success. But let me also tell you, the fourth and fifth seasons of The Wire was the best newsroom drama there was. Remember, that show focused on the Baltimore newspaper essentially going under and trying to cover everything that was going. Really, look at...
Art, I don't know. Art, I swear to you, I had it on my list yesterday. I don't know if I said The Wire, but I promise you, as I was sitting in studio and making my own list, it was included. By the way, to Art's point, here's reporting from CNN, October 17 of this year, October 17. Important because the boat strike that we're spending so much time discussing was on September 2nd. So, month and a half later, commander overseeing U.S. forces in Caribbean to retire 1 year into tenure. The admiral overseeing U.S. Southern Command, which has responsibility for forces in the Caribbean, where the U.S. has carried out multiple legally ambiguous strikes against alleged drug cartels, is retiring 1 year into his tenure. The news comes just days after the U.S. military conducted its fifth known strike on a boat alleged to be trafficking drugs off the coast of Venezuela, killing 6 people. It comes 1 day after President Trump said publicly that he'd authorized the CIA to operate inside Venezuela. And then it says that tensions had been simmering between Hegseth and Admiral Halsey for weeks before the admiral announced he was leaving. Hegseth did not believe Halsey was moving quickly or aggressively enough to combat drug traffickers in the Caribbean. Yeah, that is a guy I'd love to speak to. Thanks for the telephone calls. Lightning round rules apply, moving quickly and beginning in Missouri. This is Laverne. Hi, Laverne in DeSoto. What did you most want to say?
I do not think the Admiral should be prosecuted for anything.
Why?
It was headsets, illegal order, and if you get an illegal order, you should not do it.
Okay, but let's just play this out hypothetically. Let's say that he was given an illegal order and he knew it was illegal. What should he have done?
Well, should have refused it.
Yeah.
Told a person above him what happened.
But he didn't.
And, not do it.
But he didn't.
No, he didn't. So but he most likely, if they play it out, he will be discharged from the military. I don't know if it would be honorable or dishonorable, but my husband served 26 years in the Air Force. And so we've discussed this, and you have to go by the code of conduct that you go by. You agree when you go in the military.
Look, I read his bio. Thank you, Laverne. I've got a story from The Hill today that posted in the newsletter at Smerconish.com, which gives his background, one of the first to deploy to Afghanistan after September 11th. Seems like a solid citizen and, an American hero. But what now? Because Angus King last night on CNN read to Caitlin Collins from the Department of Defense Law of War Manual. I'm going to share this with the Admiral, as a matter of fact. And it gives as an example of something that would be illegal to fire upon the shipwrecked would be clearly illegal. That's a quote from the DOD Law of War Manual. So I don't know how you have any choice but to be disciplining the Admiral. Hi, Shelley. You're in Hartford, Connecticut. Tell me one thing.
Yeah, I work in the utility industry, and I think the president's decision to call affordability a Democratic hoax is an enormous risk to his presidency, because there's going to be a certain segment of his followers that think drug boat dealers deserve what they get. But across the country, the utility industry, red, blue, or purple states, is enormously focused on stabilizing energy costs, because affordability is the greatest concern that we're hearing for consumers.
I totally agree with you, and I would add it's not a utility issue, but healthcare. Same thing. The same thing. Everybody, doesn't matter whether you're dependent upon the Affordable Care Act, everybody's premiums are going up. I'm not dependent upon the ACA. I happen to have bought my initial insurance through the ACA, but did it through Blue Cross. And what was the number I said? 20.6 or 7% is the premium increase that I am experiencing by keeping my same coverage. Steve, you're in Chicago. Tell me one thing.
Yes. Hello?
Hi.
Hello?
Go ahead,
yes,
Steve.
So, this point I think is important. Yes, I think this point is important. So we're not talking about some 19-year-old enlisted kid, who doesn't understand the rules that govern engagement and warfare and the treaties that we've entered into over the last century in terms of the international community. This is an admiral. He's supposed to be conversant with these things. So he's supposed to be able to make that choice, having learned about these things, whether he attended Annapolis or West Point or whatnot. As an admiral, it would have been Annapolis. But again, I asked our officers to do something, and they're supposed to be able to make these decisions. It's why the old, the German excuse of I was following orders doesn't fly any longer. You cannot use that. You have to be able to assert what is a just order, what is not, what is lawful, what is not. And killing people, I'm sorry, this is a no-brainer. It's on page 1 of things you don't do. Killing innocent people floating in the water, you don't do this.
And Andy McCarthy was here. Thank you, Steve. You often see him on Fox News if you watch Fox News. He's a conservative lawyer. He was on this program 2 days ago. Something that he said stands out in my mind. He believes there needs to be a declaration of war by the Congress. I agree with him. The war power is something that we give to Congress, not to presidents, except in limited circumstances and for short periods of time. There's been no declaration of war here. And Andy McCarthy said, and even if there'd been a declaration of war, and if the boat strike, the second tap, happened as it's been reported by the Washington Post, even if it were Al-Qaeda, worst of the worst, and there'd been a declaration of war, if two guys are left behind on a boat and they're clinging to life, you can't take them out. You cannot take them out. Quote, if this happened as described in the Post report, it was at best a war crime under federal law, said Andy McCarthy. Listen to that podcast. We released it on Monday, and look at my podcast listings. Find that one because it was a really worthwhile conversation. Hi, Jeffrey. You're in San Francisco. Tell me one thing you wanted to say.
Well, I thought that Tennessee last night was a good result for the Democrats. What I don't understand about this Hegseth thing is that 2 days ago he denied the whole event, and now he has all these excuses. And why isn't people calling him out for the this is a fabrication, and now there's all these excuses as to why it was justified. And lastly, Michael, for your Mingle project, I think you and Steven Singer, he can finance it, should put out big bumper stickers that just say Mingle and have anyone who wants one get one. And when you're driving down the road, you'll see it on another car and you'll start talking about mingling.
Well, I love the idea. And it's funny you mentioned Steven because I was thinking of a Mingle pin. And then I was kind of reluctant to bring it up to him because, he should not have to eat the cost of the Mingle pin the way that he ate the cost of the 9/11
Why wouldn't
pins.
people buy the Mingle pins?
But then it makes it look like we're in it because we're ringing the register and we're not.
We're in it for fun. People want Mingle merch. They're asking.
You think a Mingle pin would be a good thing? Because I have thought about it.
I do. And I like the bumper sticker idea too. I like Mingle merch.
I mean, for whatever
you're wearing this, I'm wearing this. Let's talk about it.
Okay, well, you bring it up to Steven because I don't want him to think I'm freeloading. And
Why are we freeloading? We're selling it.
Well, because we want it at cost. It can only...
No, we can make a little.
He can make a little. He deserves it. Okay, stay right where you are. Admiral Stavridis is in the on-deck circle. Make sure you're voting on today's poll question. What about the Admiral, as in Admiral Bradley? We'll go there next. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said Tuesday that a couple of hours, that's a quote, passed before he was made aware that a September military strike he authorized and watched live required an additional attack to kill 2 survivors, further distancing himself from an incident now facing congressional inquiry. These comments came as he was seated next to President Trump in the midst of a cabinet meeting, the final one of the year. Here's a snippet of what Secretary Hegseth said yesterday.
We didn't see any survivors, to be clear, after that first strike.
I did not personally see survivors, but I stand, because the thing was on fire. It was exploded and fire and smoke. You can't see anything. You got digital. This is called the fog of war. This is what you in the press don't understand. You sit in your air-conditioned offices or up on Capitol Hill and you nitpick and you plant fake stories in the Washington Post about kill everybody, phrases on anonymous sources not based in anything, not based in any truth at all. And then you want to throw out really irresponsible terms about American heroes, about the judgment that they made. I wrote a whole book on this topic because of what politicians and the press does to warfighters. President Trump has empowered commanders to do what is necessary, which is dark and difficult things in the dead of night on behalf of the American people. We support them, and we will stop the poisoning of the American people.
We're privileged to have Admiral Stavridis with us each and every week. This is one of those days I feel obliged to give him all of his props so that you can appreciate the opinions you're about to hear. Admiral James Stavridis is a retired 4-star U.S. naval officer, currently partner and vice chair at Carlyle, that's a global investment firm, the 12th chair of the Rockefeller Foundation Board, previously having served for 5 years as the 12th dean of the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy at Tufts, and led the NATO alliance in global operations from 2009 to 2013 as 16th Supreme Allied Commander with responsibilities for Afghanistan, Libya, the Balkans, Syria, counter-piracy, and cyber security. There's much more to his CV, but this is Admiral James Stavridis. Admiral, I know this is a very fluid situation, and each day we learn a little bit more, although we've still not seen the second video. But I'd love it if you would break down the responsibility as you see it through the chain of command as it relates to the second boat strike.
The way this normally would run, and I suspect it did, is the Secretary of Defense gives the overall orders and direction. Then it flows down to the regional combatant commander. This is a job I used to have. Commander U.S. Southern Command. It's a 4-star, can be an admiral generally. Headquarters Miami, and you're in charge of all military activities south of the United States. One click below him in this circumstance, I would guess, is the Joint Special Operations Command. That's a 3-star. It, at this time, was headed up by 3-star Admiral Bradley, Navy SEAL, excellent reputation. And then the chain of command would flow down to the operational elements on scene. So here's the point, Michael. It's a big, complex chain of command. It runs from the Pentagon itself. Secretary of Defense, as he said already, was watching this, was very involved in this tactical operation, and then flows all the way down to the operators who pulled the trigger. Here's the point. The two most important words you gave in your opening were congressional inquiry. This absolutely requires people being placed under oath, not just winging it. It means that you have to go in, face the Congress. Frankly, I think initially, perhaps this ought to be behind closed doors, but ultimately a report's going to have to be issued. It's a big deal. We need to look at it very, very closely and understand exactly what happened.
So what law applies? Because during the course of today's program and in the last couple of days, I've quoted different legal scholars. I'm going to play in a moment for you and everybody else something that Senator Angus King read aloud from a DOD manual last night on CNN. But what would Admiral James Stavridis direct me to go and read if I wanted to know the bounds of propriety in this case?
There are several authorities here, to include the Geneva Conventions, to which the United States are signatories. There is something called the Law of War, which is a bit more amorphous, but is a pretty well codified body of work. Then what Senator King may have been reading is DOD policy. That's another authority here. And most importantly, frankly, to those operators on scene, all those things are vital and background and important, and they won't violate any of those, or they should not. But what's most important to them will be the specific rules of engagement that are promulgated for this particular operation. All of those are authorities, and again, we get back to we can all have opinions based on a video or a press conference. Let's put people under oath. Let's have a TikTok that goes minute by minute. Who said what, when, what orders were given. Play it alongside the video. And Michael, I assure you, all of it is available in the Pentagon. I've been involved in many of these operations. They are extremely well documented, shall we say.
Well, the fact that the second video, I presume there is a second video or a video of the second strike, the fact that it hasn't been released, of course, makes me suspicious, because if it exonerated the behavior of all of the people who are in this chain of command, I would think we'd have watched it by now. You agree?
I do, and more importantly, the chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee, I should say the ranking member, Senator Jack Reed, a Democrat, quoted this morning using that exact word, I'm suspicious. He is, I think, joined by Senator and Chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee, Roger Wicker. The two of them have called for vigorous oversight. And I think even more significantly, Michael, the House Armed Services Committee over on the other side of our legislature has two very experienced chair and ranking members, Adam Smith and Representative Chairman Rogers. They have also called for vigorous oversight. So this one is not going to go away, and I think the sooner the Pentagon fully cooperates, and if there is malfeasance at any level here, it needs to be addressed. And above all, everyone in the chain of command needs to be accountable for what has happened here.
This is a quick snippet, but it's what I made reference to from CNN last night. Caitlin Collins is interviewing Senator Angus King, and he's reading from the DOD Law of War Manual. Let's watch and listen.
The manual that is supposed to govern what we do, and I hate reading on the air, but I'm going to in this case.
Please do.
Section 18.3.2.1, clearly illegal orders to commit law of war violations. The requirement to refuse to comply with orders to commit law of war violations applies to orders to perform conduct that is clearly illegal, or orders that the subordinate knows in fact are illegal. By the way, that's what the senators and the congressmen were saying. You don't obey illegal orders. For example, I'm reading, orders to fire upon the shipwrecked would be clearly illegal. Could be much more clear than that.
Admiral Stavridis, your reaction to that?
As I mentioned, one of the crucial authorities are these laws of war. And again, they're rooted in customary international law. They're codified by different nations in slightly different ways, but they're bedrock. And I learned this as a plebe, a freshman, if you will, at the U.S. Naval Academy in the mid-1970s. When an opponent is knocked down, be it a ground soldier who's been knocked out by a concussion, be it a pilot who's ejected from an aircraft and is floating down, like Senator John McCain had to from his jet. You know, the North Vietnamese didn't machine gun him as he came down. They captured him, they tortured him, they interrogated him. But in this case, as Senator King is right to point out, a shipwreck, meaning a ship that's sunk, survivors of that don't get machine gunned in the water, if you will, or blown up by a follow-on missile strike. There are instances of that happening by Nazis in World War II, by the Imperial Japanese fleet in World War II. That's not who we are as a country. When we do have a war crime like the My Lai massacre in Vietnam, we take accountability, we have a full investigation, people take responsibility. That is what needs to happen here.
In the original Washington Post story, the one that brought this to light, first there was reference to Secretary Hegseth as giving a verbal order, quote unquote, the order was to kill everybody, said one of the sources. And then there's this graph. The commander overseeing the operation from Fort Bragg in North Carolina, Admiral Frank M. Mitch Bradley, told people on the secure conference call that the survivors were still legitimate targets because they could theoretically call other traffickers to retrieve them and their cargo. He ordered the second strike to fulfill Hegseth's directive that everyone must be killed. What strikes you about that paragraph?
What strikes me are the two words I said before, congressional inquiry. That's a Washington Post story. I respect the level of effort they put into their journalism, the way they try and source things very accurately. They don't have the power of subpoena. They can't put people under oath. They don't have access to all of the video. They don't have access to all of the transcripts. But guess who does? The Pentagon. So it's time to get away from speculating about who said what when, find out who said what when, put that alongside the video, and then determine if what we have in front of us is in fact a violation of U.S. law.
Okay. One more stab at this, and then I'll let you off the hook, because I appreciate the sensitivity of it, and you're being very clear. You want more information. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. And again, I don't have a security clearance. I don't have access to all this information, but the Congress does. And therefore, this is going to require a congressional inquiry.
Andy McCarthy, who is a conservative attorney and I'll say legal scholar who's written on this and getting a lot of attention because some will say, well, even Andrew McCarthy, he's often on Fox, he believes that there's problem here. There's culpability as he sees it. He was on this show on Monday, and I remember something he said. He said, even if they were Al-Qaeda, even if there were no question that we're dealing with terrorists, and even if there had been a congressional mandate, which there isn't here, if there are two individuals and they're shipwrecked and you take them out, that's a violation of the law. I guess that's kind of presented as a hypothetical to you, but what do you make of it?
As a hypothetical, as something that you're discussing in a classroom in Annapolis or at West Point,
yeah.
And if you ask the plebes in the class, the 18-year-olds, hey, would it be legitimate for you to take out these individuals? I think they would answer no, because that's what they have been taught. That's a pure hypothetical at this point. Let's get the facts on what happened. I do want to make one other point that's important here, which is regardless of how the investigation ultimately comes out and says at this level in the chain of command there's a violation of the law of war, etc., that doesn't excuse the Secretary of Defense from overall responsibility of what has happened here. So I think it's important to bear that aspect of accountability in mind as well.
Right, but if he gave, I mean, to go back to the video of last week, if he gave, hypothetical, an illegal order should not have been carried out.
I would hope not. And that, again, is what we will determine when we have all the facts in front of us, which as yet we do not.
We appreciate you every week, but especially on a day like today. Admiral James Stavridis at StavridisJ, admiralstav.com. Thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure, and I suspect we'll be revisiting this topic in the months ahead.
Yeah, I imagine we will. Thank you, Admiral Stavridis. Admiral Stavridis is here each and every week. We value his contribution to this program. Today's poll question at Smerconish.com. What about Admiral Mitch Bradley? Should he face disciplinary action for his role in the second strike on a suspected drug trafficking boat? Admiral Stavridis was just here. Our focus in the poll question today is on a different admiral, Admiral Frank Mitchell Bradley. Helene Cooper and John Ismay profiling him for the New York Times, saying, during his career, Admiral Frank Mitchell Bradley, a stoic and cerebral SEAL, known as Mitch to his peers, has ordered and carried out military strikes against targets in Afghanistan, Yemen, and other war zones. Over the decades, he drew little attention outside the smoke and mirrors world of military special operations, but now he is facing his biggest professional challenge in public. After years of following orders with clear rules of engagement and with congressional authorities, targeting jihadists in rural and urban settings, Admiral Bradley was put in command of a legally murky attack on September 2nd, targeting a boat in the Caribbean that the Trump administration says was smuggling drugs. And in ordering a second strike that killed 2 survivors who were clinging to the burning wreckage of the boat, something his superiors say they did not specifically order him to do, Admiral Bradley now finds himself in potential legal jeopardy. That's why he's the focus of today's poll question at Smerconish.com. Glynis, thank you so much for your phone call from Richmond, Virginia. What did you most want to say?
I have to be honest, I am almost incredulous anymore that we live under a Department of Defense and Department of Justice that apparently is creating their own laws and that we also have a judiciary and a legislative branch that's almost complicit in it.
I don't think it's all so straightforward. In this instance, if 2 men are clinging to life and they pose no threat, you can't make a second strike. You can't make a second strike even if... Let me flesh this out. But you heard me ask of Admiral Stavridis, like, what are you reaching for if you want to know the law of a particular situation? And I think the answer is it's complicated because there are a variety of things that kick in different circumstances. You would think commonsensically they would know not to carry out an order, not to give an order of killing individuals who are completely defenseless, even in a war scenario. I mean, I loved something Admiral Stavridis said. I mean, I love it in terms of, I thought it was so insightful. He talked about, Senator McCain and how John McCain was shot down in the Vietnam conflict, and it's not as if they opened fire on him as he was parachuting to safety, because that would violate the laws of war. You can shoot down his plane, but when the man is now in a parachute and he's headed for the ground, you can't. Hi, Dave, you're on Long Island. What did you most want to say?
Okay, I want to say that the Waco story's already been contradicted by the New York Times.
Wait, I'm sorry. The what? Okay. The what story?
You said the Post story. Is that what we're talking about? Has been contradicted by New York Times about Hegseth given a kill order by their anonymous sources. But I want to say what I think is really going on here, that's going to end up happening, is that this well-versed admiral, who's no rookie at what he's doing, was given the order to blow up the boat and its contents. Whether that took 1 strike or 30 strikes, that was the objective. And those 2 individuals just happened to get killed while that objective was taking place. Because the way it's being presented is like they blew this boat up and you got 2 people just floating in the water, that they said, let's waste some more missiles or artillery to just kill these 2 people floating. Guaranteed that's not what's going to end up happening here.
If the New York Times has reached a different conclusion than the Washington Post, where the Post has said that they have 2 sources saying that Secretary Hegseth gave that verbal order, that is news to me. I don't know that, and I'm read in on all of this, including the Times. That's my first observation. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying that is revelatory to me because I don't know anything about the Times saying that's not what happened. And relative to Admiral Bradley, I continue to go back to this graph from because it's the best reporting that I've seen, like what specifically was his role. From the original report last Friday in the Washington Post, the commander overseeing the operation from Fort Bragg in North Carolina, Admiral Frank M. Mitch Bradley, told people on the secure conference call that the survivors were still legitimate targets because they could theoretically call other traffickers to retrieve them and their cargo. He ordered the second strike to fulfill Hegseth's directive that everyone must be killed. Now, there are 2 different things going on there. I mean, it sounds in one part like he thought that they were posing a risk. If that's in and of itself enough, then you don't even have to talk about Hegseth's order. But it seems like both things were taking place at the same time. Hi, Frank, you're in Idaho. Greetings. I'm not going to try and pronounce your town, but you should say it. What is it?
Coeur d'Alene.
Coeur d'Alene. Okay, greetings. What did you most want to say?
Hey, I got up this morning, 3 o'clock Pacific time, couldn't sleep. I was watching the MSNBC, the morning show. I wanted to see how the Tennessee election went.
Yeah.
Or I know how it went, how they would handle it. And they said nothing about it. All they talked about was Hegseth for the first 3 hours. And I noticed on your show, you're just talking about Hegseth and not Trump. It's like the first time Trump hasn't been blamed for something.
Are you a subscriber to my free and worthy newsletter?
Well, I put my email address and then couldn't figure it out. I never got a letter.
Oh, geez, that bums. Okay, because I want you to. I want you to.
Point more.
Okay, finish your thought. Then I want to say something. Go.
Okay, let me finish my thought. I always wondered why they picked Hegseth. He's just not that. I cringe when he talks, and I'm a Trump supporter, but he's terrible. But now I know he takes the heat. He goes in there and says no dudes with dresses and all this, and toughen up the army and everything, and takes all the heat.
This news cycle. Thank you, Frank. I appreciate it. What I was going to say to Frank, and I welcome you as a subscriber. Please just go to Smerconish.com. This goes for everybody. And sign up for the newsletter. All you need to do is input your email address. You'll get it every day at 8 a.m. Eastern Time. 20 hand-selected, curated links from yours truly. Most often heard comment is positive, and it's people who say, I scroll through the headlines every day. It takes me 2 to 3 minutes, and I feel like I know what's going on in the world from a whole variety of sources, not just one. And we have an open rate for the newsletter that in most months exceeds 70%, and that is unheard of. It's more than double the industry average. But the real thing I wanted to say to Frank and everybody else is, from the Tennessean, my lead story today was on the outcome of the Tennessee election. I'd be spending more time talking about it if the Democrat had won, because then it would really have been a shocker.
Well, you talked to Mark about it as well in the last hour of the program. So, yes, perhaps, I mean,
he wasn't there, I guess.
Maybe he wasn't there. That's okay.
Yeah. Well made point. That is true. Okay, more phone calls and then other headlines from the newsletter. This is Mario in New Jersey. Mario, what did you most want to say?
Hey, Michael, longtime listener, and, you have a real rational spin on things, but we always have the wrong conversation here. We're not talking about why we're taking out these boats. We're talking about the unintended consequence of what happens when we take out these boats. And you know what? It becomes a right-left argument. When Obama was using drone strikes in Afghanistan, there was no conversation about it. But I want to have the conversation about the millions of people that are dying in our country from fentanyl poisoning. We know where it's coming from. And you know what, Michael? These aren't fishing vessels. These are cigarette boats that are used in drug trafficking. So here we got an administration that's finally doing something to stop it, and now we're questioning the methodology rather than going back and saying, okay, what's the common goal here is to stop narcotics flows into this country because the money that's being generated is funding bad groups of people.
Okay,
and I just wish we would get back.
Here's my response to that. Okay, to the extent they're bringing in drugs, I want them stopped, even using lethal means. But, and this is something I routinely say about the Trump administration, I happen to agree with the objective of where they're trying to go, but it's the methodology that always leaves me disappointed. Clean this up from a legal standpoint. There needs to be a congressional authorization that is lacking today if we're really at war with Venezuela or some agents of Venezuela.
Michael,
and you can't wait. Let me finish because I heard you out. And if in fact, because I haven't seen the video, but I suspect it exists, but if in fact there's video out there and it shows two individuals clinging to life, you can't blow them out of the water. Can you and I agree on that last point?
Yes,
okay.
I do. But Good. One quick point, though.
Go ahead.
As far as this goes, I am saying that we lose the narrative. You're saying congressional authority. When has Congress acted responsibly in the last 10 years?
Okay,
they can't even put a bill forward.
I hear you, but the president has control of both houses of Congress now, and I don't think that's going to be the case in a year. So he best make hay while the sun shines, as they say. More phone calls, more headlines in just a moment.
Now, the headlines from today's Smerconish.com newsletter.
I'm looking at the Drudge Report. I took a peek during the course of the break. Lead story, photograph of the Admiral. Will Admiral take the fall? Boat strike, blame game is what Drudge is leading with right now. And our poll question, perfectly timed, should Admiral Mitch Bradley face disciplinary action for his role in the second strike on a suspected drug trafficking boat? The yes votes, 62.26%. The no's are at 37.74%. Total votes as of this moment in time, 24,673. More of your phone calls in a moment. TC, what you got?
So a great headline from the Wall Street Journal that is right now at Smerconish.com and was in the Smerconish.com daily newsletter, and that is about our friend Scott Galloway. Scott Galloway hated investment banking, but learned important life lessons. The Notes on Being a Man author on his dad's absence, watching Mary Tyler Moore with his mom, and the college class that changed everything. And this is a really interesting piece that is an interview / personal, very personal deep dive into Scott growing up and how he became who he was, his original estrangement from his father. His parents are both gone now, how he felt when they died. Like, it just is really personal and important. So good one.
Let me promote the Scott Galloway book club release for Notes on Being a Man. It's a fabulous book. It has a lot of Minglish themes in terms of the need to get our young men interacting with one another. I'm a huge Scott fan. He's been a guest many, many times of mine. And I was just thrilled to see him get his just desserts,
for sure.
In a good way.
He's everywhere right now. I've seen him everywhere. He was with Oprah. Do you really need to say anything else?
I did not know that.
Yes.
Okay, well, it doesn't get any bigger than that.
Right.
It doesn't get any bigger than that.
So there you go.
What else catches your eye from the newsletter, TC?
In a bad way, and I'll say his name once and then I won't say it again, the Luigi Mangione trial that is going on right now. And
I don't get it.
I said this at the time that if you're supporting someone like this, you are part of the problem. Cougars Cougars for
Luigi.
Luigi. Yes. That is, they're wearing T-shirts outside the courtroom. I can't with that.
Yeah, he
Come on.
took a man's life in cold blood.
Allegedly.
Allegedly. I was getting to the alleged.
Okay, just
I was
making
getting
sure.
to the
You know
alleged.
me. You trained
a
me.
year ago.
Basically a year ago. Yeah. Big signs that say healthcare is a human right, murder for profit is terror, Luigi before fascists. Like, that's crazy. That's crazy.
We had a story because of these pretrial hearings that have been taking place. He's been in the news for that reason and has made court appearances. We had a story yesterday or the day before where the testimony was offered from law enforcement who discovered him in the McDonald's in Altoona, Pennsylvania.
Yes.
And what gave him away?
His eyebrows.
His eyebrows.
Yes, he's very distinctive looking.
Does that remind you of any other crime solved in part by eyebrows?
Oh, yes.
Brian Koberger.
In Idaho.
Right.
Yeah, the Idaho murders.
Same thing.
Wow.
Yeah, the
Let this be a lesson to all you miscreants and murderers.
With bushy eyebrows. Yeah, exactly.
Wow. Yeah, they said that he was really nervous in Pennsylvania, that he was shaking. And that was part of the reason also that the police officer was absolutely sure that's who it was. And the phone call, I read this at Smerconish.com, the phone call said, I'm absolutely sure that this is who this is.
I've told the story before, and I'll just tell it briefly again. The hotel where the healthcare executive stayed the night before he was murdered, allegedly by Mangione, is my hotel of choice in New York City. When CNN was in a different location because they've moved to Hudson Yards, but when they were on Central Park South, it made it very convenient for me to get up early on a Saturday morning and go to this hotel. And for the first 2 years of doing my program, I slept at this particular hotel every Friday night. I know the lay of the land in that area very, very well. And so when I saw that he was murdered outside the Hilton and that he was walking into the Hilton in the early morning, I immediately said to myself, he wasn't staying at the Hilton. He was staying across the street. The Hilton is where
the meeting was
going to take place. So not only was I correct in that he was murdered on 54th Street, but I knew the entrance as soon as I saw that entrance. And lo and behold, within 2 or 3 days of the execution, I find myself in Midtown Manhattan, staying at my hotel of choice. And so I woke up and crossed the street and looked at that location. And what jumped out at me was the lack of any memorial, right? I mean, someone's been murdered in cold blood. And there's nothing left to mark the scene. It's like nothing to see. What was the movie with the kid toys or Toy Story? Like nothing to see here, people. Just go back to your business. And like people walk through that location thousands of people every single day without any, like no marker, no nothing.
Yeah. Sad.
Really sad. Just in terms of the distorted priorities of Cougars for Mangione.
Right.
And yet no flowers left. I always regretted. I mean, here I am leaving to do a CNN show and it's 6 o'clock in the morning. I don't know where I'd buy flowers, but I always have regretted not going and getting flowers and leaving them and hoping that it would start something.
Make a point. Wow.
But I didn't.
Wow. All right. Want to take more calls or you want a couple more headlines?
Yeah.
Yeah, because they're like jammed.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's a lightning round. Chop, chop. Here we go. Matt, Manchester, New York. Tell me one thing you wanted to say.
Mike, good morning. Thanks for taking the call. Listen, I just want to say first, you are by far my favorite radio host. So take that for what it is, my friend.
Well, I love your accent, so it means a lot. Go ahead. Finish your thought.
Well, I just want to be realistic about this, Mike. These boats, they are absolutely not capable of bringing drugs to the United States. You know that, I know that. They're too small. They would require multiple refueling. But I keep hearing people saying they're bringing drugs to the United States. Now, of course, there's drug use in the Caribbean. I've seen it. I used to be involved in government enforcement of narcotics. These boats are certainly not carrying fentanyl. I mean, it's just ridiculous to even make the suggestion that they are.
There ought to be a showing of evidence. There ought to be a showing of evidence. Something's left behind from one of these that they could be putting it on display a la your local district attorney who makes a bust, brings in the cameras and says, okay, look at what we've just collected. Matt, thank you for that. Thank you as well for the compliment. I'm moving fast. Christina, Virginia Beach, tell me one thing you wanted to say.
Hi, I'm one of the people that voted no, and this is why. If the Admiral had refused the order, I'm wondering if he could have gotten any kind of fair trial under this administration.
Right, but he'd certainly be legally protected if, in fact, it was an illegal order, just like that video of a week ago from the 6 Democrats told us would be the case. Nancy, you're in Wilbraham, Massachusetts. Tell me one thing.
Well, the thing is that, this, to me, it's a ruse. I mean, this is about regime change, and it's horrible that he's dragging our military down. I listened to John Yoo, who said, from the get-go, this is an illegal order. They knew, second strike or not. And a former admiral also on, I think it was Franken, said that, never before have we fired directly onto boats without a warning shot. It's really, I cannot believe that, these military people are put in these positions. I think the admiral was, he shouldn't have done it, no question. But having Hegseth, directing this, it just does a disservice to our military, to what America stands for in a lots of ways.
Nancy, I'm glad you brought up John Yoo, and thank you for your phone call. I'm glad you brought up John Yoo because John Yoo, who's been a guest on this program on any number of occasions and in studio on several occasions, he wrote, let me just remind everybody, he wrote the harsh interrogation method justification memos. He's the guy who gave the legal basis for waterboarding and other techniques that were used against the worst of the worst at Gitmo. So for John Yoo to say, and he's a brilliant guy and a Berkeley law professor, of all places he's at Berkeley, for John Yoo to say this crossed a line is significant. It's like Andy McCarthy writing at Fox News and saying this is a war crime. We'll wrap up with your final calls in just one moment. Make sure you're voting on the poll question at Smerconish.com. TC Homestretch, what you got?
Well, let's talk about American Canto for a moment, shall we? Headline on Mediaite. Olivia Nuzzi says, I don't know how to responsibly handle this on camera as she's confronted about withholding RFK info. This is an interview that she had with Tim Miller of The Bulwark to promote her new book, American Canto, which dropped yesterday. And he was pushing her about whether or not she withheld information while she was dating, in a relationship, is that whatever was happening? And that is the question now about, was the relationship itself the improper thing, or was how she handled information about him more the improper thing? And there's a little audio that I want to hear, I'll let you hear. So PJ, if you can roll that.
I don't really know what to do with the question that you're asking me, because it's making a lot of assumptions.
It's not like assumptions. It's just like you said you helped him, right, during the campaign. And
I write about it. I write about what I did wrong. Yeah.
And it's like once you've done that, like you didn't, you cease to have become like a journalistic actor, and like you're.
Well, I lost my job, right? I was fired. Right. I was fired, and I was in hiding, and I was afraid.
Scared? Were you scared? Yeah.
I was terrified.
Of what?
I write in the book about, I was terrified of the man I did not marry, and I was very worried about people knowing where I was.
So when she says the man I did not marry, that's how she refers to Ryan Lizzie the whole time.
Right.
The man I did not marry. And then the politician is how she refers to RFK. Mm-hmm. So I'm not sure what was going on there, why she was losing it so much. This was, I thought, a perfectly reasonable line of inquiry about.
Sure.
So where that goes, I'm not sure. But evidently she asked for the cameras to possibly be turned off. And that was a very strange interview.
The whole story is strange.
Okay, so where do you think the book dropped yesterday?
Right, Tuesday.
How do you think it's doing? American Canto. I'm on Amazon right now.
Okay, so I've not peeked. I don't know.
Okay.
I know from reading that before the release, it was in the 18,000 range, which is okay. You would expect, it hasn't popped yet. It hasn't been released, although there's been so much written about this.
Right.
And I mistakenly believed that people were following it as closely as I have followed it, or as closely as you have followed it. Right. And when I ran a poll question on it, admittedly on Black Friday, but 9,000 people voted.
Right.
There was a day we would have loved 9,000 people to vote. But, we expect 30,000 people to vote.
Yes.
So that was a big signal to me.
Okay, but you've gathered all your data.
Okay, I'm thinking as I'm speaking. I think she's at number 2,200.
You're too kind to her. 6,709 total. But interestingly,
in the ranking.
In the whole ranking.
Yeah.
But they break it down, and she's the number one new release in journalist biographies.
Okay, well, how many journalist biographies were released this week?
There could be so many.
There were probably 3.
So many. Number one.
Aaron, you're in Virginia Beach. Give me your final thought on the boat strike issue.
Hey, Michael, thanks for taking my call. I served in the Coast Guard for over 30 years, did the drug mission, and also was a researcher at the RAND Corporation. And when I look at the pictures in the news, it's perplexing because neither fentanyl nor cocaine is primarily smuggled from Venezuela. The other thing is 11 people on a drug smuggling boat gives me pause. I've never found a smuggler that has 11 people because that takes up a lot of valuable cargo room with, the cargo. The drug cargo is, hundreds of thousands of dollars. You wouldn't mix them with people.
Right. So it was the first reaction that I had, but unlike you, I've never done counter drug missions. So I thought, well, maybe that's the way that it is. But 11, thank you, Aaron, 11 guys on a drug, they stick out like a sore thumb. Hi, Matt, you're driving in Georgia. Tell me one thing quickly.
I totally agree with the guy that just called. I did 20 years in the Coast Guard doing it. Counter narcotics down in the Caribbean, and I totally agree with that other guy. And I just wanted to push back on some of the individuals that are saying, or kind of hinting that this whole stopping all the drugs right now is happening for the first time ever. We've been out there for 30, 40, 50 years doing this, and it's perplexing, just like that other gentleman said.
It's a nice message to remember that men and women in the Coast Guard and other of our branches have been fighting this battle for a long time. Maybe not with the success we would hope, but waging a good war. Okay, gang, apologies to those whose calls I could not answer for time constraints. Please make sure you go to Smerconish.com. Vote on the poll question of the day. It addresses the gun strike issue, the boat strike issue that we've been talking about. I'll see you tomorrow.